In traditional Chinese culture, there are two widely circulated and profoundly influential sayings. One is never judge a person by their appearance, warning people not to jump to conclusions about someone based solely on their external looks. The other is, the face is born from the heart, meaning that a person's inner state naturally reveals itself, externally reflected in their bearing, temperament, and facial features. At first glance, these two statements seem contradictory. If we should not judge by appearance, why does the heart manifest in the face? And if the face is born from the heart, why can't we judge people by their looks? This is actually wisdom from different levels of practice. The former advises against defining others by static, superficial characteristics, especially not with prejudice. The latter reveals the deep connection between body and mind, pointing out that a person's inner cultivation will eventually leave traces externally. The two are unified under a more complete cognitive framework. The external is a projection of the internal, but this projection takes time, requires sedimentation, and also requires the discerning eye of the observer. True practice is precisely the process of self-awareness and self-remodeling within this framework. This article will start from the three levels of practice: cultivating form, cultivating mind, cultivating virtue, combined with 7 key external observation dimensions, to systematically explain how practice achieves an inner unity with one's personal destiny, and finally reveal the deep dialectic that practice changes fate. Part 1. The 3 levels of practice: Fei, from outside to inside, and then from inside back to outside. What is the essence of practice? Different schools have different definitions. But from the perspective of life state, practice is a person consciously adjusting their energetic frequency, information structure, and behavioral patterns, moving life from disorder to order, from confusion to clarity, from passively enduring fate to actively participating in the shaping of life. This process requires step-by-step progression and cannot be skipped. Cultivating form, the foundation of cultivating form, is the first stage of practice, and the most easily misunderstood and underestimated. Many people think that practice means sitting in meditation, chanting sutras, or contemplating Zen, while external posture, behavior, and lifestyle are trivial details. However, this view precisely reverses cause and effect. The body is the most honest recorder of lifestyle. A person's diet, daily routine, exercise habits, sitting and standing postures are engraved day after day into muscle memory and skeletal alignment. Long-term overeating will inevitably lead to a sluggish body. Staying up late year after year will inevitably lead to a dull complexion. Prolonged sitting will inevitably lead to a stiff lower back. Slouching with a closed chest will inevitably lead to shallow breath. These are not moral judgments but pure physiological facts. Cultivating form is the foundation, because the body is the most fundamental carrier of the mind. Without a smooth, stable, and energy-filled body, the mind is like duckweed without roots, losing control at the slightest emotional fluctuation, becoming scattered at the slightest distracting thought. The concrete content of cultivating form is very practical: reasonable diet, neither overeating nor starving, not picky, regular daily routine following the circadian rhythm rather than fighting against the natural clock, moderate exercise to stretch the sinews and bones and promote the flow of qi and blood, proper sitting, standing, and walking posture to keep the spine straight and the chest open. These seem simple, but most people cannot achieve them in their entire lives. The reason is not lack of ability, but that the mind has not yet reached the required level Fei, either laziness, indulgence, or simply not caring about one's own body. Therefore, cultivating form is both the starting point of practice and the first test of a person's sincerity in practice. Cultivating mind, tempering emotions and responses when the body gradually gets on the right track and qi and blood begin to flow smoothly. Practice enters the second level: cultivating mind. The core of cultivating mind is emotional stability and controllability of attention. A person may develop beautiful muscle lines in the gym and be strict with diet, but if they explode in anger or sink into depression at the first sign of adversity, it shows the work of cultivating mind is not yet done. People with unstable minds inevitably have a dissipated temperament. This dissipation is clearly shown in wandering eyes, hurried gait, imbalanced speech rate, and fickleness in dealing with others. The essence of cultivating mind is not suppressing emotions, but expanding the capacity to accommodate them. When anger arises, instead of forcibly pushing it down, you can watch it arise, stay, and dissipate with awareness, Without being swept away by it, when fear comes, instead of denying its existence, you can make rational choices while carrying the fear. This process requires a great deal of daily practice. Observe your irritability in traffic jams, observe your defensive reactions when criticized at work, observe whether your words have deviated from solving the problem when conflicts arise in intimate relationships. Another extremely important dimension of cultivating mind is the degree of resonance when interacting with others. A person who has cultivated their mind well may not be smooth talking or flattering, but the feelings of others will be genuinely seen and respected by them. This resonance is not a technique but a natural result of expanded inner capacity. When a person no longer thinks only of themselves, but can simultaneously accommodate the positions and emotions of others, their temperament transforms from a tense self-defense to a relaxed, open, and attractive state. Cultivating virtue, the core accumulation of energy-cultivating virtue, is the highest realm of practice, requiring long-term sedimentation. The essence of virtue is not external moral precepts, but the positive accumulation of inner energy. When a person does good deeds, has kind thoughts, helps others, and restrains selfish desires, these actions do not vanish without a trace, but leave positive imprints on the structure of the mind. When these imprints accumulate to a certain degree, they form a kind of magnetic field that transcends logic, what people often call temperament, aura, or charisma. The relationship among cultivating virtue, mind, and form is: the body is the hardware, emotions are the software, and virtue is the source code of the operating system at the bottom. A person of profound virtue, even in adversity, radiates a kind of stable, gentle, trustworthy power. This power is keenly perceived by others through the clarity of the eyes, the steadiness of the voice, the calmness of the gait, and even the relaxed rhythmic aura of the body at rest. This perception is not mysticism, but an instinct formed over human evolution. We can instantly judge whether a person is trustworthy, relying precisely on the unconscious capture of these external details. The path of cultivating virtue is not mysterious, but it is extremely difficult. It requires a person to make the right choices in small matters day after day, choosing honesty in the face of temptation, choosing warmth when indifference is an option, choosing responsibility when shirking is possible. In the short term, these choices often seem like losses, but accumulated over time, they shape a completely different state of life. The ancients said, "Virtue is the foundation that carries all things," meaning that only with deep virtue can one bear corresponding wealth, status, and blessings. This is not moral preaching but an objective description of the laws governing life. Part 27, Key Dimensions. How to read a person's practice from external signs. Practice is internal, but internal changes will eventually overflow to the outside. The following are 7 external observation dimensions that best reflect the inner state of practice. They are tools for self-examination, as well as windows for understanding others. Clarity or turbidity of the eyes. The eyes are the windows to the soul. This phrase has been said so often that many have forgotten its real weight. The clarity or turbidity of the eyes is the most intuitive reflection of the state of the mind. Clarity does not mean good eyesight, but the eyeballs being clear, the gaze stable, and the focus not scattered or shifting when looking at something. Turbidity does not mean nearsightedness or eye disease, but a hazy, foggy look on the surface of the eyes, with a scattered, flickering, or overly sharp gaze. A person with a pure and clean mind, with few cluttered thoughts and no accumulated emotions, will have eyes as clear as a mountain stream. Conversely, a person long mired in anxiety, anger, greed, or fear will have these emotions affect the eye muscles and tear secretion through the autonomic nervous system, gradually leaving traces in the eyes. More importantly, the clarity of the eyes also reflects a person's concentration and stability. A person well versed in practice has the mind following wherever the gaze goes, without the split state of the eyes looking here but the mind wandering elsewhere. Luster of the skin. The skin is the largest organ of the human body and a display screen for the state of internal qi and blood. So-called luster does not mean oily or made of shine, but a rosy, smooth, and elastic quality that radiates from within. Traditional Chinese medicine speaks of full qi and blood, while Western medicine speaks of good microcirculation and nutritional status. Both point to the same thing. When life vitality is sufficiently abundant, the skin naturally shines. The influence of practice on the skin appears at 2 levels. First, at the direct physiological level, regular routine, stable emotions, and reasonable diet keep the endocrine system in balance. Cortisol not too high, sex hormones not too low, vaso, the skin naturally appears healthy. Second, at a deeper energetic level, when a person cultivates mind and virtue, inner conflicts decrease, energy is no longer consumed by unnecessary psychological defenses, and more life force flows to the body's extremities and surface, manifesting on the skin as a warm glow. Many practitioners have better skin in middle age or even old age than in their youth, precisely because internal consumption has greatly decreased. Gait, or the way of walking, is a direct reflection of the coordination between the spine and the waist and hips. A person with unobstructed qi and blood vessels will walk with force starting from the sole, transmitting through the ankle, knee, hip, and lumbar spine all the way to the vertebrae, and the top of the head, the whole body moving like a linked spring system. The gait light, fluid, and elastic. Conversely, a person with stagnant qi or weak qi often shows one of the following characteristics: dragging feet not leaving the ground like being hauled, stiffness, knees not bending, hips not rotating, upper and lower body disconnected, haste, short, quick steps, center of gravity leaning forward, as if in a hurry or excessive sway, excessive hip swing, weak core. These gait characteristics not only reflect the current physical state but also record a person's psychological patterns. An anxious person tends to lean the center of gravity forward and walk hastily because he is always rushing towards the future. A depressed person tends to lean the center of gravity backward and walk heavily because he is dragged by the past. A person with a calm mind who lives in the present has a stable center of gravity, a composed gait, and every step fully experiences the process of lifting, moving, and placing. An important sign of practice is whether one can maintain this composure and awareness in daily walking. Shape and temperature of the hands. The hands are the extremities where qi and blood circulate, and a barometer of heart function and blood circulation. Practice enriches internal qi and blood, improves peripheral circulation, making the hands fuller, nails showing a healthy pink color, and palms warm rather than cold and clammy. In addition, the flexibility of the fingers, the strength of the grip, and whether the hands rest in a naturally slightly curved, relaxed state reflect the tension level of the nervous system. A person in a chronic state of stress has persistent sympathetic nervous system activation, peripheral vasoconstriction, making the hands cold, stiff, even purplish. A person who has cultivated mind to achieve a state dominated by the parasympathetic nervous system has peripheral vasodilation, making the hands warm, soft, and elastic. When shaking hands, whether the other's hand is warm and firm or cold and limp, is not just a social impression, but a quick probe of that person's inner state. Resonance of the voice. The voice is the externalization of breath, and breath is a direct manifestation of life force. Cultivating form makes breathing deep and long. Cultivating mind makes breathing steady. Cultivating virtue gives breath a kind of stable energy. Together, these three act on the voice, moving it from superficial vocal cord production to deep resonance, originating from the lower abdomen dantian. The characteristics of such a voice are not necessarily loud, but penetrating, not necessarily fast, but with clear rhythm. Even through a wall or in a noisy environment, it can be clearly heard and gives a sense of calm. Conversely, a person with weak qi often has a voice that is floating, shallow, hurried, or excessively forceful to mask inner insecurity. The connection between voice and practice is easily overlooked in daily conversation, but its impact on others is profound. A person with a calm, warm voice, even when not physically present, leaves that voice in the listener's heart as an intangible support. This is one of the foundations upon which practitioners can bring peace to others. Tension in the neck and shoulders. The neck and shoulders are the areas where the body most concentrates stored pressure. People who bear excessive responsibility for long periods, who live in a constant state of having to, who endure chronic anxiety, will have persistent tension in the trapezius and sternocleidomastoid muscles, leading to stiffness in the neck and shoulders, rounded shoulders, forward head posture, and other postural problems. These postural issues are not just aesthetic concerns, they are the physiological manifestation of inner psychological patterns. The process of practice is essentially a process of continuously unloading unnecessary burdens. As a person gradually learns to distinguish what is their own responsibility, what is others' expectations, what is the arrangement of fate, and what can be let go of as attachments, the tension in the neck and shoulders naturally releases. This release cannot be replaced by massage or stretching. Fey massage can temporarily relieve muscle knots, but as long as the inner psychological pattern remains unchanged, tension will reaccumulate within hours or days. Real change comes from inner letting go, and inner letting go, through nervous system regulation, restores muscles to their natural length and elasticity. Fullness and temperature of the lower abdomen. The lower abdomen is regarded in traditional health culture as the dantian, the core area of the body's energy. From a modern physiological perspective, the lower abdomen contains important nerve plexuses, such as the celiac plexus, digestive organs, and core muscles. A person with strong vitality will have a lower abdomen that is soft yet elastic, warm not cold, and naturally rises and falls with breathing rather than being stiff like a board. Long-term stress, anxiety, and negative emotions affect the abdominal cavity through the brain, gut axis, leading to a cool lower abdomen, bloating, and muscle tension. For a person who has reached a certain depth in practice, breath naturally sinks to the lower abdomen, and breathing is no longer shallow chest breathing, but deep abdominal breathing. This breathing pattern not only improves oxygen utilization efficiency, but also further promotes overall relaxation and repair by stimulating the vagus nerve. Therefore, the fullness and temperature of the lower abdomen are extremely important indicators of whether a person's life foundation is stable. Part 3, the dialectic of changing fate through practice. Fate destiny is the starting point, not the end. Many people, upon hearing concepts like personal destiny or 8 characters, easily fall into the trap of fatalism, believing everything is predetermined and that practice or effort is futile. This understanding neither accords with traditional wisdom nor with modern scientific knowledge. Personal destiny, such as the 8 characters, astrolabe, or purple star astrology, is essentially the initial parameter set of a person's life. It is like factory settings, indicating innate constitution, personality tendencies, and the energy distribution at certain key points in time. It does deeply influence a person's entire life. But this influence is not absolutely unchangeable. The core idea of the I Ching is the word changes fei. The only thing that does not change is change itself. Fate is not a pre-laid railroad track but the riverbed of a river. The water, life energy flows along the riverbed most of the time, but when the water volume is large enough and the direction clear enough, it can carve out a new channel. Practice is the process that changes the water volume. Cultivating form adjusts the body's energy channels, making the river flow more smoothly. Cultivating mind adjusts the waves of emotion, preventing every storm from breaking the banks. Cultivating virtue adjusts the water source itself, making the river change from turbid to clear, from intermittent to abundant. When these 3 advance together, a person's overall energy state undergoes a qualitative leap. This leap is perceived by the outside world as fortune getting better, but in essence, it is a change in the frequency of his magnetic field, attracting different people, things, and circumstances into his life. This process follows a very important rule called loss first, gain later. Many people expect practice to bring immediate benefits, fei wealth, health, smooth sailing. However, true practice often begins with a phase of loss. This loss is not about deprivation but about clearing out desires that constantly consume energy. Endless shopping, scrolling through social media, gossip, clearing out bad habits, staying up late, overeating, prolonged sitting. Clearing out relationships that cause internal friction, friends and relatives who take pleasure in belittling you, clients who can never be satisfied, draining partners. This process is painful because it requires facing one's own dependencies and weaknesses. But only after this phase of loss, the cleared space can be filled with new things. Wisdom replaces delusion, virtue replaces selfishness, stability replaces anxiety. The order of loss first, gain later cannot be reversed. Once reversed fei, that is forcibly pursuing good results without clearing out old patterns, fei, the dilemma of virtue, not matching position appears. Even if you briefly get what you want, you cannot keep it. The compounding effect of practice also manifests in the dimension of time. It is not like winning the lottery with sudden wealth overnight, but more like a long-term investment with a modest annual return. Yet the power of compounding will produce astonishing differences after a sufficiently long period. A person who spends half an hour daily in meditation, half an hour in exercise, practices awareness every time an emotion arises, and upholds conscience at every choice point fei after 1 year, their temperament, health, relationships, and even external opportunities will see visible changes. After 5 years. An insurmountable gap will form between them and their peers. After 10 years, they will have become a completely different person. Conclusion: Practice has no end, only direction. The unity between practice and personal destiny ultimately rests on a very simple fact. All external traces, eyes, skin, gait, hands, voice, neck and shoulders, lower abdomen, are the true feedback of internal practice. No pretense can long deceive all discerning eyes, and no genuine progress will fail to leave its mark externally. Practice is not about becoming a master in others' eyes, but about living each moment more clearly, more calmly, and more powerfully. Regardless of gender, age, background, or past successes and failures, as long as you begin to act today, adjust one small detail of your life, observe one rise and fall of emotion, make one choice in line with conscience, the world will respond through your gradually changing state. This is not mysticism, but cause and effect. Your respect for your own life will ultimately be repaid by life in more abundant forms. Practice is not about escaping the mundane world, but about living in it with fuller vitality, not about negating fate, but about becoming a participant in fate rather than its prisoner. The road is long, with no end, only a direction that continuously moves upward, inward, and toward goodness. And every time you see your progress reflected in external traces, you will know that this road is worth walking to the very end.